I have tweaked lighting this time, I have tweaked sound this time, and I'm going live a little bit earlier than I did before. And I'm going to start with a song like I did last time. It is one that I tweaked the words to, but I did not write the original. So, you set your goals and you've got them all right. You've got your vision and it's in your sights. There's a fire in your eyes that we all recognize. You're gonna beat it, so beat it, beat it. I see you running and you're breaking down walls. You're confident and you're making calls. Your focus is clear. You're right where you belong. You're gonna beat it. 'Cause you know that you're strong, so beat it, oh beat it. You'll never be defeated. Show them you've got it, coach them to fight for what they believe in. Tonight is your night, so beat it. Anyways. Wanted to do that to get a few people on here first. We are going to jump and dive right into this. So last year, read this book. Just in case you didn't see, last week I did a talk about the law of trade-offs by John Maxwell. Talks about it in one of his books. And today I'm going to touch on a principle that's in extreme ownership. So if you've never read it, really great person. Hopefully that's the right direction. So my question to start off for today is, do you ever get excited when you see a heart emoji instead of one of the thumbs ups? So let me know down in the comments below. If you're tuning in, tell me where you're tuning in from. But if you ever get really excited when you see a heart instead of thumbs ups, like we get thumbs ups all the time, but every time that there's that heart, I know me personally, I get excited. So what do? Do you get excited when you see a heart? Is it normal for you? Is that something you love? Let me know. And I'm going to touch on that in just a couple minutes. If you're not seeing the engagement and you're not seeing the sales that you really wanted in your group or in your community, I'm going to tell you exactly why. And this comes from my background of community engagement strategy, and I'm going to drop a few really great questions down a little bit later that are going to help you to gauge what it is that you need to change or what it is that you need to do or shift so that you can actually see your sales soar. So I want to talk to you about something. I grew up in the church, and one of the things that I saw when I was doing community engagement with ministries and organizations is there's the pastor mentality and there's the evangelist mentality, and they're two very different things. So the first thing is that when an evangelist comes in, they'll make the sales. Like, they'll sell stuff all day long. They might have a book, they might have a message, they make those sales, right? So the evangelist mentality makes sales. They also get warm butts in seats. So the evangelist brings in a bunch of people into the community that maybe weren't there before. So they get warm butts in seats, they make the sales. They also have a really great message, and people want to hear that message, and that is the evangelist. So the pastor mentality, they nurture the audience. They build trust by showing up consistently. They build relationships with the people. And so the evangelist doesn't do what the pastor does. The pastor doesn't do what the evangelist does. And the two of them, it actually takes a combination of the two of them to make those ministries work. But let's talk about it on the flip side, because what I see a lot of people doing in their businesses is from more of the evangelist mentality. The evangelist, a lot of times, will have several different messages that aren't always consistent. The evangelist also doesn't know the audience personally. And the evangelist cares more about ministry results than about the people's results. And that is a really big shift. And the way that we'll see this translated in business, I'll talk about that in just a second. But so if you have an evangelist mentality, what that looks like is you get some sales. You get some people into your community. You have several different messages that you put out to people. People are interested in you. They want to get to know more about you. They want to talk to you. But that is That is basically what an evangelist does. If you are just tuning in live, drop in the comments below if you have been getting likes and hearts on your things, which one you prefer, the like or the hearts. So the pastor mentality is that the pastor, they need outreach. They are concerned for people's personal results. This is how you translate it over into business. So if you have the pastor mentality, you're actually concerned about your customers' results. You're concerned about whether or not people are going to continue after they stop working with you. You're concerned about how they review your product. Those are parts of the pastor mentality. And so I'm talking about the pastor versus the evangelist mentality. And so I have a few quick questions here, but first I want to dive into this extreme ownership quote in this book. It's really good. It's also another way that you could look at this instead of pastor versus evangelist is the manager versus the leader. And so Jocko, I think I said it right, Jocko Willink, somebody correct me if I'm wrong. So he says in this book, I think it's the very first chapter, he says, without a team, a group of individuals, which is a group of individuals who work to accomplish a mission, there can be no leadership. The only meaningful measure for a leader is whether the team succeeds or fails. For all the definitions, descriptions, and characterizations of leaders, there are only two that matter: effective or ineffective. And I think one of the things that happens a lot in businesses is people blame the consumer, or they blame the client. Like, well, the client just didn't have enough drive, or the consumer it just wasn't a good fit for them. But when you're reading from the extreme ownership perspective, you get into that kind of pastor mentality where you realize that there was probably something that I did to shape the way that they're viewing this or the way that they're working with this product. And so that's one of the things that we want to keep in mind whenever we're engaging with our community online, whenever we're jumping in and having these conversations, whenever we're building up our belief structure for our clients. We want them to have a very specific perspective about what we do, how we serve them, and how they should get started with us. So that being said, I talked about the pastor mentality versus the evangelist mentality. So I have a few questions that you can use today to gauge which mentality you've been having with your business. And it'll also help you figure out what it is that you need to do to change. So the first question, and if you have your answer, drop it below. Are you sending mixed messages about what your business does or about what your community is for? So do you have a really clear focus, like one kind of message, or do you have a bunch of messages? Like maybe you have several different offers or you have several different products. What is it that you're doing right now for your business? Are you sending mixed messages about what your business does or what your community is for? The second question is, how many people in your community are you personally connected with? One of the things that I've recognized in a lot of businesses is that people will get a lot of sales, they'll get a lot of customers, and then they have no follow-up process, and they have no idea what happened with the customer. They have no course of action for review. So having those personal connections and those personal relationships lets the customer know that you care. It helps build that like, know, and trust factor. But a lot of times if you have several hundred sales, it can be really difficult if you don't have a system or a process in place for that. So that's question number 2 is, how many people in your community are you personally connected with? Question number 3 is, are you client result focused or product focused? So when you are sharing your message online, when you are in the online world, when you're putting out your advertising, when you're communicating with your clients, are you more product focused or are you more client result focused, focused on the results that your clients are going to get? And I have this really interesting story. There were 2 different ministries that I helped with, organizations, a long time ago, and one of them, the guy had an evangelist mentality. And so he got a lot of people to volunteer initially. He got this church to kind of launch. And the problem is he couldn't get people, like people would come, but people wouldn't stay. They wouldn't stay to find out more. They wouldn't stay to join and be a part of it. And eventually a lot of people left from that place. And so what I would say with that is he had an evangelist mentality. And to just reiterate, an evangelist makes sales, they get butts in seats, they have a great message, but sometimes their message is kind of mixed. They're like split between like what their message is about. They don't know the audience personally, and they care more about the results of the business, organization, ministry, more than they care about the people's results. So that was my explanation of one organization. So on the flip side, I worked with another organization where the pastor actually ended up stepping down at one point. But when he did, the people were all like really concerned because they loved him so much. They showed up. More people came. They shared about it. They talked about it. They invited their friends. They loved to share about it because they knew that pastor actually cared. And to show the pastor mentality again in that, it's nurturing your audience, building trust by showing up consistently, building relationships. Pastors do need a little help with outreach, so there is some evangelist mentality that is really good and helpful for that, but the pastor mentality is also concerned for people's results versus being concerned for just the ministry's results. And so that is a mentality. I grew up in the church, so that is something that I know a lot about, and it's easy to explain that, but just having the two variations, are you, in your business, are you having more of a pastor mentality or more of an evangelist mentality, or have you found a way to marry the two? And so I asked 3 questions earlier, so if you're watching this on the replay, put replay down below. Don't be put off. Like if you weren't raised in the church, or if you aren't in the church now, like this is still something that you should be able to understand without having to be attached to that. At the same time, know that that's where I started. That's how I grew up. That's just part of who I am. But it is a really, really simple way to understand it that goes a little bit beyond the manager versus the leader. Now you have this pastor nurturer versus the evangelist who cares more about the business processes than necessarily the clients. And so let me know below. What do you guys think? So I wanted to give a tip about hearts. I asked a question at the very beginning of this, and it said, the question was, do you get excited when you see a heart versus a thumbs up? Like, what gets you more excited? And it's really, really interesting because the Facebook algorithms will, if you heart stuff, the stuff that gets a lot of hearts actually is boosted in the algorithm. So that's one thing to keep in mind whenever you are posting or engaging with others, is that anytime you leave a heart, it boosted in the algorithm for that person. Anytime that you heart any of the comments on your post, it boosted in the algorithm. So that's just like a free little tidbit that you can use to boost your engagement. I hope you guys are having a great day. I'm about to go jump and do some other stuff, but if you have any questions, or if you are watching this on the replay, put replay down below. If you have a question, you can put a question in the comments, or you can just message me. Either way works. And wherever you're tuning in from, let me know where you're tuning in from. So I'm currently in Oklahoma, but repping my Texas t-shirt. And I sang at the beginning again. If you think that I should sing again, let me know. If you think that I should stop singing, let me know. I tried tweaking the mic so it wouldn't be so blown out this time. And I also tweaked the lighting because last week when I talked about the law of trade-offs, the lighting just kept blowing out. So you guys let me know what you think, and I will talk to you again next week.